An email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The subject line reading, "Urgent. Please review attached documents." I was sitting in my home office, finishing quarterly reports for the construction company I'd built from nothing over 15 years. My name is Garrett Holloway, 38 years old, and I thought I knew everything about my business partner and best friend of 20 years. I was wrong. The sender was anonymous, but the attachments were anything but. Bank statements showing transfers I'd never authorized, contracts with my forged signature, property deals that siphoned money from projects I believed were breaking even, and photos. Time-stamped photos of my business partner Miles Brennan meeting with contractors, shaking hands over briefcases, signing documents that should have required both our signatures. I sat there for 3 hours, cross-referencing the documents with our company records. The pattern was unmistakable and devastating. For the past 4 years, Miles had been systematically bleeding our company dry through a network of fake subcontracts and inflated material costs. The worst part? He was preparing to dissolve our partnership and leave me with all the debts, while he walked away with nearly $2 million. I closed my laptop, made myself a cup of coffee, and started planning. Miles and I met in college at Washington State University. He was studying business, I was in engineering. We were roommates, then friends, then the kind of brothers you choose rather than inherit. After graduation, I had the technical skills and he had the business acumen. Starting Cascade Construction seemed like destiny. The first 10 years were golden. We built homes, commercial buildings, even a small shopping center. Miles handled clients and contracts while I managed the actual construction. We were equal partners in everything. 50-50 split on ownership, profits, and decisions. Or so I thought. My wife Sarah used to joke that I trusted Miles more than I trusted her. "You two are like an old married couple," she'd say, laughing as Miles and I finished each other's sentences during dinner parties. She wasn't entirely wrong. Miles was at our wedding, held our daughter Emma when she was born, was named godfather to our son Tyler. When Sarah died in a car accident 3 years ago, Miles was the one who held me together. He handled the business while I grieved, took care of funeral arrangements, even helped with the kids during those dark months when I could barely get out of bed. I thought he was being a friend. Now I realized he was being opportunistic. The anonymous email led me down a rabbit hole of deception that made my stomach turn. I spent the next week carefully reviewing every document, every contract, every bank statement going back 5 years. The picture that emerged was of a man I'd never really known. It started small. Inflated invoices from subcontractors that kicked back the difference to Miles personally. Then, phantom material orders that existed only on paper. Eventually, entire fake projects that existed solely to justify moving money around. Miles had created a shell company called Northwest Materials Supply and was essentially paying himself for supplies that were never delivered. But the cruelest discovery came when I found documentation for the Patterson Elementary School project, a renovation we'd done pro bono after their playground was destroyed in a storm. Miles had secretly charged the school district $180,000 for emergency repairs that I'd done for free, pocketing the entire amount while telling me the district had no budget for compensation. I'd worked nights and weekends on that project, used my own materials, even brought Emma and Tyler to help paint murals on the walls. Miles had watched me sacrifice for those kids and then stolen from them. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling focused. I hired a private investigator named Delilah Chen, a former forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud. I told her I suspected bookkeeping irregularities that didn't reveal the full scope of what I'd discovered. I needed professional documentation of everything before I made my move. Delilah was thorough and discreet. Within 2 weeks, she'd uncovered the entire network of shell companies, fake vendors, and fraudulent contracts. But she also found something I'd missed. Miles wasn't working alone. Our office manager, Patricia Vega, who'd been with us for 8 years, was helping him. She was the one creating the false invoices, the one with access to our account passwords, the one who'd been forging my signature on authorization forms. The woman I'd trusted to handle payroll, who knew my kids' birthdays, who'd cried at Sarah's funeral. She'd been stealing from me for years. The total amount is substantial, Delilah reported during our meeting at a coffee shop 40 minutes outside town. Close to $1.8 million over 4 years. But here's what's interesting. They're preparing for something big. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were incorporation documents for a new company called Pacific Northwest Development, with Miles listed as CEO and Patricia as CFO. They'd already lined up contracts worth over $3 million, using client relationships and supplier connections they'd built for our company. They're planning to dissolve Cascade Construction, Delilah explained. Leave you with the debts and liabilities while they start fresh with their new venture. Based on the timeline in these documents, they're moving in about 6 weeks. I thanked Delilah, paid her fee in cash, and drove home to my empty house. Emma and Tyler were at my sister's for the week, giving me time to process everything without worrying about maintaining a normal facade. That night, I called in sick for the first time in 15 years. I had 6 weeks before Miles executed his exit strategy. 6 weeks to turn the tables without destroying everything I'd built or traumatizing my children. This couldn't be about revenge. It had to be about justice and protecting what was rightfully mine. My first move was securing evidence. I installed hidden cameras in our office, recording devices in the conference room, and key logging software on Patricia's computer. Everything Delilah had discovered needed to be documented in real time with indisputable proof. My second move was financial protection. I opened accounts at different banks and began quietly moving money from our operating accounts to secure locations Miles couldn't access. Not stealing, just protecting assets that were legitimately mine from further theft. My third move was the hardest. I had to act normal, continue working with Miles every day, making decisions together, pretending our friendship was intact while knowing he was planning to destroy me. 2 weeks into my surveillance, I got the break I needed. Patricia, thinking she was alone in the office, made a phone call to someone named Kevin Marsh. I listened through the recording device as she discussed finalizing the client transfers and making sure Garrett doesn't suspect anything until it's too late. I researched Kevin Marsh and discovered he was a commercial real estate developer who'd been one of our biggest clients for 3 years. Apparently, he was also Miles' primary investor in the new venture. They were planning to take not just the money from our company, but our entire client base. That weekend, I did something that felt like betraying my own principles, but was necessary for survival. I attended Kevin Marsh's daughter's wedding. It was a public event, held at an expensive venue I'd helped renovate 2 years earlier. I brought Emma and Tyler, dressed nicely, and made sure to introduce myself to Kevin during the reception. "Garrett Holloway," I said, shaking his hand. "I believe you know my business partner, Miles Brennan." Kevin's eyes flickered with something. Surprise. Maybe guilt. "Yes, of course. Cascade Construction. You've done excellent work for us." "Thank you. I'm actually looking forward to continuing our relationship through the transition." Kevin frowned slightly. "Transition?" "Oh," I said, feigning surprise. "I thought Miles would have mentioned it by now. We're restructuring the company. Nothing major. Just some organizational changes to better serve clients like yourself." I watched Kevin's face carefully. Confusion, then concern, then something that looked like panic. He excused himself quickly, saying he needed to speak with someone. 20 minutes later, I watched from across the reception hall as Kevin pulled Miles aside for an intense conversation. Miles kept glancing in my direction, his face growing paler by the minute. I'd just let Miles know that I knew something. Now I had to let him make the first move. On Monday morning, Miles arrived at the office earlier than usual. I was already there, having watched him pull up through the window. He seemed nervous, agitated in a way I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," he said, closing my office door behind him. "Sure, what's up?" "I ran into Kevin Marsh at his daughter's wedding. He mentioned you said something about restructuring the company." I kept my expression neutral. "Did I? I honestly don't remember the conversation clearly. You know how those events are. Lots of small talk." Miles studied my face. "Garrett, is everything okay between us? You've seemed distant lately." "I'm fine, Miles. Just busy. You know how it is." But Miles wasn't satisfied. Over the next week, I noticed him watching me more carefully, asking more questions about my activities, even suggesting we should review our partnership agreement to make sure everything's still equitable. Meanwhile, my recording equipment was capturing increasingly frantic conversations between Miles and Patricia. They were accelerating their timeline, planning to make their move within 2 weeks instead of the original 6. "He knows something," I heard Patricia say through the recording device. "We need to move faster." "But if we rush this, we might make mistakes," Miles replied. "Leave tracks. We've already left tracks. The question is whether he's found them yet." On a Friday evening, after the office had cleared out, I was reviewing the week's recordings when I heard something that changed everything. Miles had returned to the office around 9 p.m., thinking it was empty, and made a phone call. "Dad, it's me," he said. "We might have a problem." His father. I'd known Miles' father, Richard Brennan, for 20 years. He was a retired accountant, a pillar of the community, someone I'd always respected. He'd been at our wedding, had comforted me at Sarah's funeral. "What kind of problem?" Richard's voice came through clearly on the call. "Garrett might be catching on to what we've been doing." "We?" "Son, this was your plan. I just helped you set up the accounting structure." My blood went cold. Miles' father, the man who'd taught me how to fish, who'd played Santa Claus for Emma and Tyler last Christmas, had been part of this from the beginning. "I know, but you said he'd never figure it out. You said engineers don't understand complex financial structures." "They don't, usually. But Garrett's always been sharper than most. What exactly does he know?" "I'm not sure, but Kevin Marsh said he mentioned a restructuring, and he's been asking questions about the Patterson Elementary billing." There was a long pause. Then Richard's voice, cold and calculating in a way I'd never heard before. "Then you need to accelerate the timeline. Transfer everything you can this weekend. Make the dissolution official on Monday. By the time he realizes what's happened, you'll be legally protected." "What if he fights it?" "With what money? By the time the lawyers sort through everything, you'll be established with your new company. He'll be left with debts and contracts he can't fulfill. He'll have to declare bankruptcy. And the kids, Emma and Tyler, what about them? They'll lose their house, their stability. After everything they've been through with Sarah dying." And another pause, then Richard's voice, softer but still ruthless. "Son, you can't save everyone. Sometimes good people get hurt when you're trying to build something better. That's just business." I turned off the recording and sat in my dark office for a long time, staring out at the city lights. These weren't just business partners who'd gotten greedy. This was a family operation designed to destroy me and my children's future. The man I'd considered a father figure was willing to make Emma and Tyler homeless to enrich his son. That's when I realized this wasn't about money anymore. This was about protecting my family from people who saw them as acceptable casualties. I spent the weekend implementing the final phase of my plan. First, I documented everything, every recording, every forged document, every fraudulent transaction, and stored copies with 3 different attorneys, including one in another state. Second, I contacted our biggest clients directly, not to accuse Miles of anything, but to confirm some accounting discrepancies and ensure all invoicing had been accurate. The conversations were revealing. Several clients mentioned charges they'd questioned, but had been assured by Miles were legitimate. Third, I prepared what I privately called the nuclear option, a detailed report of every fraudulent activity, complete with evidence, that would be automatically sent to the State Contractors Licensing Board, the IRS, and the FBI if anything happened to me. But most importantly, I called my children. Dad? Emma answered on the second ring. She was 16, old enough to understand that something serious was happening. Hey, sweetheart. How are you and Tyler doing at Aunt Lisa's? Good, but we miss you. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm fine, but I need you both to know that whatever happens in the next few weeks, we're going to be okay. I've been preparing for some changes, and I want you to know that our family is secure. Changes? What kind of changes? Business stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. But Emma, I need you to promise me something. If anyone, and I mean anyone, tries to talk to you about the business or about money or about me, you tell them to call me directly. Don't answer any questions, okay? Dad, you're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just be smart. Can you do that for me? Yes, sir. Good girl. Put Tyler on. I had a similar conversation with my 13-year-old son, emphasizing the importance of calling me if anyone approached him with questions. I didn't want to frighten them, but I needed them protected from whatever fallout was coming. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. on Monday, 2 hours before anyone else. Using my administrative access, I changed all the passwords on our company accounts and computer systems. Then I printed out copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered and organized them into neat folders. At 8 a.m., Miles arrived with Patricia and a man I didn't recognize. A lawyer, based on his expensive suit and briefcase. Garrett, Miles said, his voice trying for casual but missing by miles. We need to have a conversation. Sure, I replied. Conference room? As we walked down the hall, I noticed Miles and Patricia exchanging nervous glances. The lawyer looked confident, prepared for what he probably thought would be a simple business dissolution. We sat around the conference table, where Miles and I had made countless decisions together over 15 years. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Mr. Holloway, the lawyer began, my clients have asked me to present you with a proposal for restructuring your partnership arrangement. Before we get into that, I interrupted. I think there are some things we need to discuss. I placed my own folders on the table. Miles, I've discovered some irregularities in our accounts that I think you should be aware of. Miles' face went white. What kind of irregularities? I opened the first folder and slid a bank statement across the table. Well, for starters, there are these transfers to Northwest Materials Supply, a company that doesn't seem to exist except on paper. The lawyer frowned, studying the document. I'm not sure I understand the relevance. The relevance, I continued, opening the second folder, is that Northwest Materials Supply was created by Miles and Patricia to steal money from our company, along with Pacific Northwest Development, which was designed to take our clients and leave me with the debts. I placed recording devices on the table and pressed play. The lawyer's confident expression crumbled as he heard Miles and Patricia discussing their fraudulent activities in their own voices. This is a legal recording, the lawyer protested weakly. Actually, it's not. Washington is a one-party consent state, and this is my office building. I have every right to record conversations that take place here. Patricia started crying. Miles just sat there, staring at the evidence spread across the table. Now, I continued, about that restructuring proposal. The lawyer left within 10 minutes, mumbling about ethical conflicts and the need to consult with his partners. Patricia packed her desk and departed without a word, tears streaming down her face. Miles remained in the conference room. How long have you known? He asked finally. About a month. Who told you? Does it matter? He rubbed his face with his hands. Garrett, I can explain. No explanations needed. I understand perfectly. You saw an opportunity when Sarah died and I was vulnerable. You took advantage of my grief to steal from our company and plan my destruction. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And you involved your father, which means you planned this for years. Miles looked up sharply. You know about my dad? I know about everything, Miles. Every shell company, every forged signature, every stolen dollar, including the money you took from the elementary school project. That wasn't supposed to. He stopped himself. Wasn't supposed to what? Wasn't supposed to be found out? Or wasn't supposed to hurt children? Miles was quiet for a long time. Then, what do you want? I slid a document across the table. Full restitution of all stolen funds. Dissolution of Pacific Northwest Development. Resignation from all positions at Cascade Construction. An assigned confession detailing every fraudulent activity you've engaged in. And if I don't agree? I gestured to the evidence folders. Then this all goes to the State Licensing Board, the IRS, and the FBI. You and Patricia will face fraud charges, conspiracy charges, and probably federal charges for the contractor license violations. Your father will likely be charged as an accomplice. You'd destroy 3 families over this? Miles, you were planning to destroy my family. You were willing to make my children homeless to make yourself rich. You stole from a school. Don't talk to me about destroying families. He signed the papers. A federal case against Miles, Patricia, and Richard Brennan moved with surprising speed. Within 6 months, all 3 had accepted plea agreements rather than face trial, acknowledging the overwhelming evidence against them. Miles pled guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering charges. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Patricia received 6 years with parole eligibility after 4. Richard Brennan, as the architect of the criminal enterprise, received the harshest sentence, 15 years, with no possibility of parole for 10. The restitution process was more complex than I'd anticipated. While we recovered $1.6 million in cash and assets, the full $1.847 million in documented theft required liquidating Miles' personal property, Patricia's savings, and even portions of Richard Brennan's retirement accounts. Most importantly to me, we recovered every penny that had been stolen from the Patterson Elementary School project. The school district used the returned funds to complete their playground renovation and purchase new computers for their library. When I visited the completed playground 6 months later, children were playing on equipment that had nearly been stolen from them, laughing and running without any knowledge of the adults who had almost robbed them of this joy. The subcontractor kickback network collapsed completely once the FBI investigation became public. Several contractors faced civil penalties for their participation in the fraud, while others who had been coerced into the scheme were treated as victims rather than co-conspirators. Tommy Rodriguez, the electrical contractor who'd been honest with me about the kickback arrangement, became one of my first partners in the new business I was building. You gave me a chance to come clean, he told me. Now I want to help you build something honest. The dissolution of Cascade Construction was emotionally devastating, but financially manageable. With the recovered stolen funds and the systematic documentation I'd maintained throughout the investigation, I was able to pay off all legitimate debts, complete ongoing projects, and transition employees to other positions, or to my new company. I started Holloway Building Solutions with 3 employees, myself, Tommy Rodriguez, and Danny Kelso, the former project foreman whose suspicions had ultimately helped expose the fraud. Our first project was a pro bono renovation of a community center that served low-income families, a way of rebuilding our reputation while serving people who truly needed help. Within 18 months, we had 12 employees and contracts worth over $4 million annually. But more importantly, we had established a culture of transparency and ethical dealing that attracted both quality employees and quality clients. The personal cost of the ordeal was significant, Emma struggled with trust issues during her sophomore year of college, questioning whether she could rely on any of the adults in her life. Tyler went through a period of anger and resentment, feeling betrayed not just by Miles, but by my decision to prosecute him. He was like family, Tyler said during one particularly difficult conversation. Couldn't you have just fired him and gotten the money back? Son, Miles wasn't just stealing from us. He was stealing from schools, from other families, from honest contractors who wouldn't participate in his schemes. If I'd let him walk away, he would have done this to other people. But now Katie doesn't have a dad. Katie's dad made the choice to commit crimes. I didn't make that choice for him. It took Tyler 2 years to fully understand the distinction between consequences and cruelty. But when he did understand it, he became one of the most ethical people I know. Emma's recovery was different but equally profound. She changed her major from business to social work, telling me she wanted to help people who've been betrayed by the system. She graduated summa cum laude and now works for a nonprofit that assists families affected by financial crimes. Dad, she told me at her graduation, what you did wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure bad actions have consequences. I want to spend my career doing the same thing. The most unexpected resolution came 3 years after the arrests. I received a letter from Miles, written from federal prison. Garrett, he wrote, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why I did it. I won't insult you with excuses or apologies that can't undo the damage. But I want you to know that watching you handle the situation with integrity and precision taught me something about the man I should have been. I know you protected Jennifer and Katie when you could have destroyed them along with me. I know you made sure the school got their money back. I know you helped several of the subcontractors who got caught up in my schemes. You showed mercy where you could without compromising justice. I was your friend for 23 years, but I never learned to be the kind of friend you are to me. I hope someday I can be half the man you are. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. I never responded, but I also never threw it out. Some acknowledgments of truth deserve to be preserved, even when forgiveness isn't possible or appropriate. Today, 5 years after receiving that anonymous email that started everything, I'm sitting in my new office watching the sunrise over downtown Spokane. Holloway Building Solutions now has 32 employees and annual revenues of $12 million. We've built everything from affordable housing to medical facilities, always with the understanding that our work affects real people's lives. Emma graduated from social work school and is engaged to a young attorney who specializes in helping victims of financial crimes. Tyler is a senior in high school, planning to study engineering and eventually join the family business. Both of my children have grown into thoughtful, ethical adults who understand that integrity isn't negotiable. Last month, I received a call from the FBI. Agent Martinez, who had led the investigation into Miles' crimes, wanted to discuss a new case involving a construction company that was defrauding military families through inflated home renovation contracts. We could use a consultant, she said, someone who understands the construction industry and has experience identifying sophisticated fraud schemes. I agreed to help, not for revenge against other criminals, but because families deserve protection from predators who exploit trust and vulnerability. The work is emotionally difficult. Reviewing evidence of betrayal always brings back memories of my own experience. But it's also satisfying in ways I hadn't expected. Last year, our investigation helped recover $3.2 million stolen from military families, money that will fund college educations, home purchases, and secure retirements that nearly vanished into criminals' pockets. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret sending Miles to prison, whether I wish I'd handled the situation differently. The answer is complicated but ultimately clear. I regret that Miles chose to betray our friendship and steal from vulnerable people. I regret that his choices destroyed multiple families and ended relationships that had lasted decades. I regret that Emma and Tyler had to learn about adult betrayal at such a young age. But I don't regret holding criminals accountable for their crimes. I don't regret protecting my children's future. And I don't regret sending a message that trust, once betrayed, has consequences. The hardest lesson I learned from the experience is that some friendships are built on genuine love and mutual respect, while others are simply convenient arrangements that last until something better comes along. The tragedy isn't discovering the difference. It's realizing you mistook one for the other for so many years. But I also learned something hopeful. It's possible to build new relationships based on authentic trust, to create businesses founded on genuine integrity, and to teach your children that ethical behavior isn't just idealistic. It's practical and necessary for a functioning society. 2 weeks ago, Tommy Rodriguez's son asked if he could work for our company during his summer break from college. "My dad says you're the kind of boss who teaches people to do the right thing," he told me. "I want to learn from someone like that." As I write this, I can hear Emma and Tyler laughing in the conference room next door, working together on plans for a community playground they're designing. As volunteers, they've learned that building something meaningful requires patience, integrity, and the wisdom to surround yourself with people who share your values. Miles taught me inadvertently that betrayal is always a possibility when you trust someone completely. But my children have taught me that the alternative, living without trust, building walls instead of relationships, isn't really living at all. The best revenge against betrayal isn't destruction or cruelty. It's building something better than what was stolen from you, protecting others from the same harm you suffered, and proving that integrity ultimately triumphs over deception. Some nights, when the work is done and the house is quiet, I think about the anonymous caller who started this whole journey, the person who could have stayed silent but chose to warn a stranger about impending betrayal. I never learned who they were, but their courage to speak up saved my family's future. In a world where it's easier to look the other way, to avoid getting involved, to let someone else be the whistleblower, that anonymous voice reminds me that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences in others' lives. Miles is eligible for parole in 3 years. I don't know what kind of man will emerge from federal prison, whether he'll have learned genuine remorse or simply perfected his ability to appear reformed. I hope, for his family's sake, that he's found a way to become the person he always claimed to be. But I also know that some betrayals are so fundamental that they permanently alter the landscape of your life. Trust, once shattered completely, can never be fully restored to its original form. That's okay. Sometimes the most important lesson isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. It's about building something new from the pieces of what was broken, something stronger and more authentic than what existed before. Emma called me yesterday from her office. "Dad, we just helped a family recover $80,000 that was stolen by their financial advisor. They're going to be able to keep their house." "How does it feel?" I asked. "Like we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing." That's all any of us can ask for. The opportunity to transform our pain into purpose, our betrayal into protection for others, our loss into someone else's gain. The silent partner taught me that some people will exploit your trust for their own benefit. But life taught me that the answer isn't to stop trusting. It's to trust more wisely, protect more carefully, and build something worth protecting in the first place. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. What did you think of the story? Have you ever had to deal with someone you trusted betraying you in a major way? How do you think you would have handled Miles's deception? Would you have confronted him directly or planned a careful response like Garrett did? And what about involving the father in the scheme? Does that make Miles's betrayal worse in your mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Hit that like button if Garrett's methodical approach to justice resonated with you.